So just to do a quick introduction. So I think December last year we did our first session regarding Power Platform, a introduction to low code development with Power Platform. And today we're going to have Varsha, my colleague, to present to you how to build a Power Apps Canvas app and some of her stories, personal experiences. I'm handing it over to you, Varsha.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. I'm just going to pull up a slide deck.
So while Varsha is putting out the deck, just if anyone has any questions during the session, please feel free to type in the chat, and I'm here to support. And also, you can also raise your hand in Teams, and then we can address your questions. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Stephen. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name's Varsha, and I am a low-code cloud solution architect here at Microsoft. So Stephen and I work together in the same team, and we pretty much do everything related to low-code and Power Platform. So in today's session, we'll be covering off an introduction to Power Apps, and I'll be going through this deck, and we'll jump onto demos before wrapping up with some resources to get yourself started. This session, I want it to be interactive, so if you have any questions or things you want to see during the demo, please feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand. And either Stephen or I will get to it. So now, Power Apps. Well, if you were here last time for the introduction to Power Platform, you probably know a little bit about Power Apps. But in case you don't, Power Apps is one of the tools that exists on the low-code platform developed by Microsoft called Power Platform. So this Power Platform also includes all these tools. And specifically with Power Apps, users can build apps that connect to various data sources both within and outside of the Microsoft ecosystems. And then you can build these apps, which then can be accessed on a browser or on mobile. As it's also within this Power Platform family with all these other tools, you can also integrate it with each other and build something like a flow or a chatbot from Copilot Studio into your app. And all of these tools are underpinned by 4 key aspects. We will cover some of these today, with the only exception being Dataverse, but really Dataverse is just a data platform where data is stored in tables, which then you can build your apps or your flows or chatbots on top of it. While this is all low code, there is still always room for pro developers to come in and build more sophisticated features and apps. So really, it's a tool for all, designed to overcome how long and expensive it can be to create custom applications. When I was thinking about creating this presentation, I was thinking about how I got into Power Apps myself. And really, I remember thinking back to my first time I built a Power App, and that was when I was working in university. I was still studying, and I was doing this side job as a data support officer at UTS. And at UTS, I was within that team the far most technical person, but I'd come from a more data science background. I didn't know anything about building an app or app development. I was instead just handed over a Power App that someone had built, but then they left, and then the Power App broke. So I couldn't even fix what this person made because they didn't leave any documentation or anything instead. I just had to create my own Power App from scratch. But I found that I instead stumbled across this new and wonderful world of low code. And it was great because there were so many learning resources as well as online templates, which I used to make my own app. And through this whole process, I learned not only how to build an app using Power Apps, but also things like, best practices and what app development looks like and how to document this process so that when I did leave, it didn't break and the next person didn't have to start from scratch like I did. I was also very lucky that in this position, I was able to use my Power Apps experience to help build a story and how, to show how adaptable I could be and also develop my more technical skills. And I think that experience is what led me to getting an internship at Microsoft. And as an intern, I continued working with Power Apps where I built and maintained apps that were now being used by hundreds of people within the company. And from there, that's really what has led me to here where I am today, where I get to teach customers, enterprise customers, as well as like people like yourself about the world of Power Platform and how it can be used to help you learn new concepts and technologies in a more hands-on and more accessible way. So yeah, but enough about me. Back to Power Apps and actually getting to build apps. So within Power Apps, there are two types of apps you can create. There's your Canvas apps and your model-driven apps. Each type serves a different purpose and it's suited for different scenarios. Canvas apps offers you like a high level of design flexibility. You essentially start off with a blank canvas or a template, and from there you can create custom user interfaces by dragging and dropping various elements like buttons or galleries. There you have full control over the functionality and appearance of the app. On the other hand, you have your model-driven apps, which have more emphasis on the underlying data structure, its relationship, and any business logic involved. The UI is more fixed and standardized, so there's less control on the look and feel, but more emphasis on developing and maintaining complex business scenarios. So today's workshop will be mostly focusing on Canvas apps as it has far more interesting use cases and because you get to be more hands-on in controlling how the app looks like. So when you build a Canvas app, it is usually interacting with some sort of data. And Canvas apps can connect to a wide range of data sources, both within and outside of the Microsoft ecosystems using connectors. And you can bring data from a data source by basically creating a connection. And this connection speaks to a specific data source. And Power Apps has many connectors from many popular services and on-premise data sources. You can create connections to other Microsoft data like SharePoint or Outlook to access your calendars, or you can connect to data outside the Microsoft ecosystem like Twitter or Google Drive. There are over 1,000 connectors in Power Apps, and this list is always growing. But if for some reason there's still a data source without a connector, you can build your own, because a connector is basically a wrapper around an existing API. This is probably more so for situations where there's an internal database or a legacy system. But yeah, essentially, most of the connectors you will probably be using already exist. This data can then be displayed and manipulated through controls. And controls basically refer to the user interface elements or components that are used to interact with data and perform actions like take user input. So some examples include buttons or a checkbox. And each control in Power Apps has properties that you can configure to customize its appearance, its behavior, if it's connected to any data source, or basically all those. You can also use formulas to then create dynamic interactions and calculations based on user input or other data in your app. So by combining configuring these controls, you can design a user interface that meets the requirements of your app. Some properties that are all on all controls are things like position and size or width and height, and then there are some properties that are specific to certain controls. Really what allows Power Apps to be truly low code is Power FX, which is the language used to write all your low code. You'll notice that it has syntax that is similar to Excel. So if you're familiar with writing Excel formulas, then Power Apps should be a piece of cake. So it is a language used to apply to properties on controls so you can dictate their behavior. For example, in this first example, we are editing the color of a property. For example, maybe a button, and we're using the formula color value and inputting the hex code. Or the second example, there are two functions here, and we've just chained them together using the semicolon. So the first one is using the function set, and we're naming a variable called global variable and assigning it the value, just value. And then the second function here just then navigates to a screen called detail screen. So Power FX includes a massive set of built-in functions that cover various scenarios such as mathematical operations, string manipulations, data and time functions, and more. And these functions are also documented with information and how exactly they're used, and as well as examples. So you can leverage these functions to create more complex formulas and expressions. So before we jump into the demos, I'll quickly cover how you can get access with Power Apps and play around with it. So you can sign up to the Microsoft 365 developer program and get a free instant sandbox that comes with the Microsoft 365 apps. And from there, you have access to a whole bunch of tools and capabilities like Office 365 apps, as well as the Power Platform development tools. And from there, you can then just access Power Apps by simply logging into the links and then using the credential that was provided from your developer program access. So I've done that, and I will just switch screens so that I can open that link.
Hey, Vasha, I think you are on mute.
Thank you. So let me just start over again. So once you go into this link, make.preview.powerapps.com, you can then just log in to using your developer account, and that's what I've done here. So when you first log in, this is probably what the page will look like, and you'll see on the right corner here, I'm in this environment called personal productivity, and this is the default environment that gets created for everyone. If you also click here, you can see all of the environments that you have access to. So these are ones that I've just made previously. And these are developer environments, which I only have access to. So I can switch over here. And then you can see this environment immediately looks different, and this page looks different. And that's because I have Copilot enabled, and Copilot will, is essentially like an AI tool that will let me create apps as well. So yeah, think of environments as containers. So it keeps all of your data, apps, and flows in one specific place. So you might want to have a separate environment for each project you're working on, or you might want to have an environment for all your development in one place and a separate environment for then people to come and test out what you have developed. So in this page, you can also see that the apps that are in this environment, and from here you can either play or edit it, and if you have permission to, it will let you do so. And then you can also do other things like share your app. So if I were to go click here, share, and then I can type in someone, and then also configure that from here. And from the same page, I can also see my Dataverse tables. So we quickly covered that, but this is where, one of your data sources exists, and there are still a bunch of tables that already exist within the environment, but then you can also go in and create your own table. And this is also what underpins Copilot, which we'll see in a second. And then from here, another probably exciting place as well to look into is AI Hub or AI models. And this is basically where different AI models can be added into your app. So there's a whole bunch of pre-built models, and there's also some that you can train your data on, and then you can just plug it in and then have that speak to either your app or Flow. And then also here right at the bottom, you can explore the rest of Power Platform by clicking in, and it will take you to either Power Automate or Copilot Studio or all the other ones. So maybe we'll just go straight into creating an app. So if we click on Create App, you'll see that there's a few options here. So we can either start completely from scratch, or we can start with a data source. So here we have Dataverse, SharePoint, or Excel and SQL. And then there's also these other fun new features where you could upload an image or a Figma, and then it will try and convert it to an app, which is pretty cool as well. I think we should probably use the Copilot just because it's really exciting. It's fun. So here, Copilot lets you basically describe what you want your app to do in basic language, and it will create a Dataverse table for you and build an app on top of that. So I don't know if anybody wanted to put something in the comments, something that we could try and create an app for. So create an app that collects. It does pretty good with things like collecting or list type of stuff. So we'll probably stick to that. So does anybody have any suggestions? So I realize I cannot see the chat. No. So maybe I'll put in something. Oh, contacts. Okay, cool. Thanks, Martin. So we'll put in collects contacts and hit enter and see what Copilot does. So we can see that it comes up with this table schema with some fake data. So the actual data is not really relevant. What's more important is things like the columns and column name and also column type. So we can see it's correctly assigned text to first name and last name, and emails given email text type and so forth. So, we can ask for maybe more row data and it will do that. Or if we wanted to add more columns, maybe we'll ask it to suggest some. See what it says. Sure, let's add company name. So we can here configure what we want our underlying data to look like. And once we're happy with that, we can just hit create. We can come back and change these properties and columns and so forth. So it's not the end of the world if you want to go back and add more things. But really what this is here to show, like, you can create an app within minutes. So it's building a Canvas app on top of the data that we have. I'm just going to close this for a second. We'll give it a couple of seconds to load. And we see it's created an app for us. So I'm just going to hit play here, and it's a fully functioning app. So it had the list that it generated for us, and we can go in and add new records and hit save. get added. Oh, it's adding it. Or we can maybe delete records. And there's our test one. So within seconds, you've created a fully functioning app. And this is a great place to start. And you can go in and then configure more finer things so that it meets your business requirements or whatever requirements that you have. And another cool thing is like Power Apps is fully responsive, so we can see what it looks like on other devices as well. So pretty cool. And then also in the back end, if we go to tables now, so we'll go to our custom tables, it created this table at the back end for us in Dataverse. So we can see that the table that Copilot generated is here, and this app speaks to this. Now I'm going to quickly jump to this other app that I made a few days ago. So just to kind of dig in what it is like to create and edit an app. So what that would look like is I'm going to go probably back. So if I were to hit edit on this app, it will load up basically Copilot, not Copilot, sorry, Power Apps Studio. So I made this sample app that tracks campus events, and I'll just hit play so we can see how it looks like. So there's this home screen here. It has me logged in and knows who I am at the top right. And then we also have a few buttons here. So if I click on view events, it navigates to this different page. And on the left-hand side, we can see there's like a gallery, and I can click through events to find out more. I can also search up here by event name, and we can see that it filters the list. So this is useful for when you have a pretty big gallery. And then if I were to do something like register, it will, at the back end, we don't really know what it says because I haven't really configured that, but I do have a Power Automate flow that's running so that when I hit register, it actually adds this event into my calendar. So if I were to go to 18th April, we can see that there's an end of networking event that I've added. So that's pretty cool. And then if I were to go to my next screen, similar to the previous one, we can see that there's events on the side, and again, I can search, but here looks slightly different on the right because I can edit the events. So maybe I want to change the time of this because networking event at 9 does not sound correct. So I could do something like that, and then I can save it and it will automatically save, or I could do something like add a new event, and we can see, for example, the ID is automate generated by itself, and this is just kind of simple logic that I've added in the app. And I also can't edit this because something like ID, you probably want it to just, you know, generate by itself. So maybe I can add an event for AI Builder, and then I will just put in a random location, and then we'll make it Monday 3, and then let's do something like that. And then for my description, I've just have this little description that I wrote beforehand. And then for image, this is basically the little thumbnail. I've configured it so that you can put in a URL, and then let's hit save, and there we go. We have this little event here. And then we can also do things like delete an event and it will remove it from the list. So if we would go back to here, we can see that our event that we added is in this list now, and we can register for it. So register it, and let's see if it's appeared in our calendar. There we go. So this app probably took me an hour to build, and you can see it's pretty and it has some, basic functions. There are so many other features and capabilities you can add depending on your user requirements. For example, you might want to add like a little sort here so that you can sort it by date, or maybe you want to automatically search up by their key contact, whoever the key contact is, and maybe you want people to be able to contact them through Outlook or a Teams message. So that's what it looks like. How did I make this? So breaking it down, so on here on the left hand side we have this little hamburger menu, and this pane basically lets us see the tree view of all of our controls and screens. Our screen is also a control, so we can see that I have 3 different screens here for each of the views I wanted. And then if we expand on it, we can see all the controls that make up the screen. So this is terrible naming convention. You should not be leaving it as is, but you can do something simple as, change the names of these controls. So I'll just change it so I know what this button is. But yeah, so we can see that each of these screens are made up of all these controls, and some of them are nested. So for example, if I were to go into this screen here, and then I have my gallery here, which is this larger part, but then I can also go and edit specific labels and text labels and buttons within this gallery as well. So this is all nested under this gallery here. And you can either click on this side, or you can directly click onto the screen and you drag and drop. And here, you're changing your X and Y position, or you're changing your height and width from here as well. And then also properties that we were talking about, where you control your what your control does basically using Power Effects is through properties. So there's 2 ways you can do that. At the top here, you can see all the properties that are available for it and then go through and edit here, or you can do it on this side as well. So they're essentially the same. So font weight, they're the same. And then this is like more of a high level view. If you want to look at it more in detail and be able to edit using Power Effects, you'd go into this advanced tab. And again, you can see all of these properties. You can search for properties. And if you hover over them, it tells you what a specific property controls. And as we mentioned before, different controls have different properties. For example, this gallery, I can edit items, and if we hover over it, it says it's the table of data to display. So here I used a Power Effects function. So I used sort to pull out my on-campus events, and then I have it sorted by start time. And then I also have the search function, which is what speaks with my little search bar up here. So it's saying whatever someone puts into my search bar, I want you to search that in this little gallery. So you can see with just those 2 functions, I was able to create something like this little gallery here. And then when it comes to inserting controls, there's 2 ways you can do it as well. So on the left-hand side, you have your insert tab, and from here you can just go through and find the relevant control, or likewise, similar to that, from the top here, you can choose again the same controls as well and insert them and play around with it. And then data connections. So this is where all of our connections sit. Here we can see that we have a few Dataverse tables here, and then also an Outlook connection. And this Outlook connection is what speaks to my little register button here to send that little event to add to my calendar. But we can also click add data and see that there's a whole bunch of connectors here. There's just so many. I could search something like Twitter, that's there. I can search something like Spotify. So that's not an official Spotify one, but you can see that pretty much everything exists here. And also you only have access to the data which you would have through the connection. So for example, OneDrive, if I click on it, I'll have to log in with my OneDrive and it'll only give me access to what I already had on my OneDrive. So you won't be able to access someone else's stuff unless they give you their credentials, which is probably not appropriate. And remember how we also talked about how Power Apps easily integrates with our other Power Platform tools? So here we can connect to Power Automate flows. So you can add flow, and then from here you can directly create and edit your flow and configure that. So we'll wait for this to load, and it comes with a whole bunch of pre-built templates. And essentially a lot of these flows, how it works is you start off by pressing either a button or something in your Power App happens, and then it does something like send approval or notify a user. So in our little app, that's how I made my create event one. So if someone were to press a button, for instance, it would go in and create that event in my calendar. So to see how that works here, I'll click onto my button and then my unselect property. So it's saying when you select this button, this is what I want you to do. And here, this is where I get to run my flow. You can see it's the same name, and then I just hit run, and then it takes in some input parameters, which I specified within my flow. So, and then here I just told it, put in, the event name, the start and end time, and then the description, so that when I hit register, it sends that and runs that flow. And then probably the other interesting thing in here is components. So components are basically reusable controls, so you don't have to copy and paste each time. So they're useful for things like your headers, or if you have like a little menu on the side. So, we have this little header that's on every single page. So it was just easier for me to do a component, and then once that gets saved, it comes up as like a control. So if I go into insert and then under custom, we can see my component that I have here. And if I click on that, there's my little header here. And then within this component is also where I specified, for example, my little user thing. And this is a pretty cool feature as well. It's a great way to personalize your app. And it's this function just called user. So I call user, and then I can do things like pull up my email or full name. So it will just automatically fill that with whoever's logged in. It will populate that information with. Other things I can do in here are like also look at app settings. So if I clicked here, I can provide my description, app icons, as well as looking at display and so forth. So this is like more of your general app. And then in this area as well, you can look at things like upcoming features and things that you might want to try out as well. So like chatbot components in here that you need to turn on. And then there's like maybe a few experimental things that you want to try as well. So yeah, and then when I'm happy with all the changes that I've made, I can just hit save. I didn't edit anything here, so I can't do that, but there we go. I can hit save, and then it will just save it within this Power App Studio. So the end user won't be able to see until I publish, which is this little button here. And then I can publish that, and then the end user will then be able to see all the changes I've made. All the changes I've made. So, let's see if we can probably go and add some more things to this, because this is a pretty basic app. I think one thing we can probably notice is that I don't have something like a back button. So if I were to go in and click view events, I can't go back. There's no way for me to do that. So that's probably a super easy fix. We could do something like maybe edit the actual component here. So I've jumped into here, and this is great because once I edit this component, it's just going to edit all of those screens automatically for me. So let's try and add in a control, and probably just going to add a back arrow. So we could do, you can add a button or even an icon, essentially functions like that. So I'm going to add this little arrow and then maybe make it white so we can actually see. And then so when it user selects it, we want them to go back. Luckily for us, there is a function called back. And then once we switch back to our screens, we can see that's automatically added onto all of our screens. So if we can hit play, I'll go into view events, and then I can go back to this screen again. And also, yeah, this is the little reference that I use all the time. I always have a tab with this open because there are so many functions, and even something like, you know, the back function is probably something you wouldn't know exists, but it does. So, you know, these are useful functions like the back and the navigate functions as well, which is essentially how a lot of our, you know, buttons and icons work. And then say if we wanted to add a new screen, we could do that again here, new screen, and we could do something like a blank screen or these different layouts as well, which will make it easier if we wanted to split the screen. Or we could do something like use templates as well. So maybe we want to use the calendar template and see what our calendar looks like instead of having to, you know, open up Outlook each time. So I clicked on that and it automatically added this calendar here for me, and everything's like nicely labeled, and there's all these controls as well. So if I were to hit play, let me switch to this calendar, we can see that it comes up with this feature, and then we can again see our little events here. And then we could potentially, you know, configure things as well, because this is also built on a gallery. So I just clicked on that, and now I know which gallery it's referring to, and then I can click through some of these things and maybe change it. Like, I don't know what this is. I'm going to get rid of that. Something like that I might get rid of, and to get rid of my little, I might want to add maybe a description. Probably undo that little, oh, screens. Okay. Then there we go. I broke something else. There we go. If I wanted to add maybe a little description, so I can click into this. So the way a gallery works is essentially it's speaks to a data source. So this one, if we go on to items, it tells us what these items are, and then it lists each of the rows in this little template here, and we can configure what specifically we want, and we reference each of these through this formula, like this basically syntax. So this item, and then whatever the column name is. So for example, if we wanted to change the title, so this item dot, and it tells us all the columns that were part of this data source. So I'm not sure what we could, maybe the description, if that was there. I don't remember what that was, but yeah, that's not useful. We'll just leave it to subject. So we can configure all of that thing, and then you can again go through, change all your controls as well, and maybe want to get rid of the header here, and then instead add our component. So we'll insert component and our headers here. We will have to probably configure that little bar here. So you see if I try to delete some things, some of the things break, and that's because what I deleted is being referenced by some of these other formulas. So nope, I've just fully broken it. That's all right. But if we go into this formula, for example, we can see that what it was doing, it was really had this reference to another control, and we pulled the height from that plus 24. So maybe if I change that to instead my component here that I have. So this one is called component. I'm just going to change it. And then if I say, we can see that's fixed. So what that was doing now is it's taking the height of this component, and then we're adding 24 to it for its Y value. And then again, we might have to go through and like change that as well, but we'll leave that there for now. So if we would go back to maybe this page, probably another thing that we'd want to try and add is some logic, like some business logic to it. So one thing that we had done here was maybe this ID thing, right? We don't want people to be able to put in the ID. We want it to be automatically filled. So I was able to do that by setting the default so that it would basically enumerate on what the IDs already exist. So on our table or on campus table, so if I go back here, or on campus events, we have an ID column, and then I just added a function where it takes the maximum of this ID column, and then we're adding 1 to it. And then that becomes the default when I hit new event. We might want to do something like with this register button. I don't want people to be able to register like multiple times. If they keep hitting register, then I have another table here that looks at the event attendees. Then we can see that I've registered myself 3 times for the same event. So, you know, how can we fix that? Because we don't want this table to just fill up with the same repeated data. So we could potentially do something if someone has registered already, they shouldn't be able to edit this button. So this is probably something, you know, if you're completely new, you might have to do a quick Google, but because I know, I'll tell you, right, it's display mode. So this property lets us configure that. So there's a few display mode options. So if I were to click display mode dot, it tells us the options. So edit is what lets us able to actually register. But if we were to do something like disabled, it stops the user from registering. But now we can't register at all. So this is probably where we're looking to build a little bit more of a complex kind of formula to control that. So we'd probably do something like with maybe an if function. So if this person's already registered, they shouldn't be able to click the register button. Okay, cool. That sounds easy, but how do we do that? And then also, yeah, so how do we do that? So probably what we'll need to look at first is we want to pull the information of the person, of like the events and registrations, right? So we want to make reference to the table that we had before. A little toolbar is blocking it, but it's that table there. So we want to be able to filter that and say that if Barsha's in that list, then we don't want her to register. So probably a way to visualize it is I'm going to put a gallery in here. This is just more for visualizations purposes and how we build this up. So I'm going to connect it to my event attendees list. And then maybe configure this so that event ID. Yeah, So we see the list that we had here. So I'm registered to event 6 3 times, and then I'm also registered to event 2 and 5. And if other people register, then there would be other names here, but because I'm the only one logged into this one, it's only my name. So what we'd want to do is then to specifically filter down to the event that I'm clicking on here, and then also to the user that's signed in again. So, you know, if we were going to our little advanced tab and then to our items, we're probably wanting to use a function like filter. So I'm just going to go in here and see what my filter function does. So this is a super useful thing to have saved, because it tells you, you know, what inputs it's looking for, as well as giving examples. So we know that the filter function works by, we specify a data source or a table, and then a formula that we want to filter on. So, and then we can see a few examples here as well. And we can see that we can also use operators like and. So we can do something in our case where we can filter for the event and the person. So I'm going to do filter my event attendees list, and then comma. And you can see that it also tells you how to build the formula down here as well. So we want event ID to equal, and then this item ID. So this item means the gallery item that I've clicked on. And then let's just close bracket that to make sure that we haven't broken anything. So there we go. So we can see that it's now only filtering on the event 6 that we've clicked on here. So if I were to click on here, we see that, and then we see nothing for these two because there's nothing in the list. And then I'll want to filter on the user as well. So I want my attendees. So these columns I'm taking basically from the column name. So there's this attendees and event ID here. And then attendees, I want it to be the person that's logged in. So again, we're going to use our user function that I talked about before. So user and then dot full name. And then there we go. So that didn't really change much because I'm like the only person on this list. But if you had multiple attendees, it would also filter that down. And then we know that, you know, for instance, I'm registered for these events, but not for this event. And it basically brings up nothing. It's empty. So maybe we want to derive like a Boolean out of it. So we could look for something like a is empty or an is blank function. So lucky for us, there is an is empty. Here we can see there's actually quite a few, so you might want to take a quick read over this and see like which one's applicable for which one. When I first built this, I tried is blank and it didn't work. So I had to look why, and it's because it doesn't work on a table. This way you want to use the is empty function. So I did that. So I'm going to put in is empty at the start here. There we go. I don't know what happened there. Oh no. No break. Little. No. Okay, let me just go into that. Oh, okay. I realize why. It's because I'm in a gallery, so this doesn't really return anything useful. So it's expecting me to give me a table, but I'm giving a Boolean instead. So let's leave that there. And instead, I'm going to add, let's add a little table, not table, sorry, a label. And then here in the text, I'm going to put in my little formula that I wrote. So we know And then we can just try this out here. So it's coming up as false, whereas here it's coming up true. Yes, this is empty. Vash is not registered for this. So again, we can build on top of that and say, okay, if it is empty, capitalize, we want the display mode to be edit. So I'm putting these in quotation marks as well because this is a text label. But this is just to show you how it looks. So let's see if that works. So I'm saying if Varsh is not registered, she should be able to edit and click on the register button. If she has registered, which we know she has here, then she shouldn't be able to register. So that formula I know is working. So I'm going to edit my button directly now. So again, our display mode property, I'm going to paste that and I'll have to remove my quotation marks. And now the final to see if it works. So you can see that doesn't work. I can't register. And now I can register here. So it really is that simple. So you start off kind of building up and you know, you'd have something like this on your side and just slowly look at what you need to look and what kind of logic you're applying. And also, you know, things like Google, Stack Overflow, and all the forums are going to be super helpful. I'm usually Googling things 50% of the time. It is easy, but sometimes things like getting used to the syntax can be confusing. So I don't want to put anyone off by saying this is hard. It's not. It's more just trying to find what you need. For example, you know, if you didn't know that the back button exists, you wouldn't, you know, back function exists, you wouldn't really know until someone tells you, or if you were to, you know, look through all of these functions, which you probably aren't. So it's more of that being the case than anything. So yeah, that's basically kind of covers what Power Apps is and how you can build a Canvas app as well. So I'm going to quickly go back to my slide deck just to you know, share any resources as well, and then we can probably wrap up. Yep, Stephen.
Hey, Rasha, Martin has two questions from the chat. The first one is can you show us how to handle the versioning for Canvas app? And the second one is how can we move the Canvas app from one environment to another?
Yeah, sure. So you do that with basic thing called solutions. So, you know, when we publish, you have the version that it publishes as well. And then we have for basically moving apps and also like keeping source control and so forth, you use this concept called solutions. And solutions is again, okay, yeah, solutions is basically like a package, and you can create a solution to put together your apps and flows in one space. So I don't know if this has anything in it. I don't think any of these has anything, but you can basically create and control everything in here. And if you want to move it to a different environment, so say you developed in this one environment, you would select that, and then you would export your solution, and then you'd go into your next environment. I'm going to just try and it won't let me do that one, but let's just create a new solution. So test solution, and then you'd have to select a publisher. I'm just going to leave it as all default. And then I can add my app in here as well. So I'm going to add my app that I had. So it's in here, And then I can go back and then export the solution. And then also it has your versioning. So, and we're going to leave this as unmanaged. So this is a little bit extra stuff, but unmanaged basically means that we can also edit this. So I'm just going to export this, and then it will just download a zip file. So it's currently exporting, and then we'll give it a few more seconds. That long. Oh, there we go. It's exported successfully. So if I were to go into my other environment here, I can then bring it in by just hitting import, and it should have downloaded. Oh, I don't know where it went. Let me try that again. I'm just checking where it saved. Oh, there we go. I needed to download it. There we go. So it had the little download thing. And then we can see that it's now downloaded. And then I can go back here and then import my solution. And then import that. And it will, oh, it has a few dependencies. So it's not working because I need to import my tables as well. Sorry, have them included in my solution. But it would import and it would tell me the version. So if I were to then import the same solution, but then have a version that increases, it will either just then upgrade or patch that. So that's how you kind of work with versioning and also just moving from environments. Cool. We just then share my screen back to the slide deck. Oh, no, wrong slide deck. And these are just some resources. So the first two, we've kind of been through that. First one's just a link to all the PowerX formulas. And then the second one is if you want to get started, have your own demo tenant as well. And it's pretty cool because you can sign in with other users and see how it looks like, and then configure things like security or look at those logic, and then maybe also like configure like having that dev test and prod and how that looks like. And then this is where all Power Platform knowledge sits, all your learning, all docs, everything's in here. So super cool, useful resource as well. And there's also like, if I remember, the learning pathways as well that will take you from scratch how to build an app, a basic, like I think an ordering app or something like that. And then also finally, here I've just popped in a link for a quick one question survey on basically taking your guys' inputs and what you'd like to see in future of these Power Platform sessions. We do have like a rough agenda, but we want to make sure it's things that you guys would be interested in. So if you want to see more on AI Builder or more on how to make Power Automate flows or things like that, just pop that in and they'll be super useful for us for future sessions. And Cool. Thanks for that suggestion, Martin. Yeah, good UI is super important.
That is great. Thank you, Vasha, for your presentation. And Michelle also posted the schedule for the next sessions, upcoming sessions in the chat. So the next one we will be talking about how to build a model-driven app, right? So today, Basha showed us how to build a canvas app, and the next one will be how to build a model-driven app. And we have other exciting topics coming as well. And as Washer mentioned, this is to say, this is a planned schedule. But if you can, finish the survey and tell us what you want, and then we can actually, we're happy to change or adjust our topics based on what you really want. So with that, I'm not sure, Michelle, if there is anything you would like to say.
I will be sending the next calendar invites out today, so don't worry if you don't see that one in your calendar as yet. You should see it today, and I'll see how much energy I have for pasting the rest of them. Otherwise, I hate spamming people with all the invites all at once, so I feel guilty. So yes, maybe you'll just get the next session, maybe in the next two, and we'll see how we go. But Varsha, that was a wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you so much. And thank you, Stephen, for joining and supporting all those questions in chat. Definitely, I learned a lot of things because Power Platform is not my platform at all. So there was a lot of very interesting stuff both in the chat and in the session. So thank you both. And thanks everyone for joining. It was really good to see you here. And as always, I'll put the recording on YouTube for all the ones that are too busy in their lectures to see us live. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All.
Thanks, all. Thank you all. Bye.